In Chapter 6, Hương, Hạnh, and Hiếu talked about their stories in Vietnam. Meeting cousins for the first time, going to a wedding, and not going to the beach. This time around, we were able to visit the beach, and more, and bonus, relatives we didn't know we had. Welcome to Vietnam Trip 2012, Hanoi to Saigon. Well, renamed to Ho Chi Minh City, with Mẹ, Hiếu, and me. I was 10 years old, like Hương, when they went in 2000. And now, in this moment, Hiếu is 16. This is Chapter 7, Nguyễn in Vietnam, Part 2.
Welcome to Growing Up Nguyễn, a story of 4 siblings holding on to our identity
while fulfilling our parents' dreams.
I'm Hương.
I'm Karin Hạnh.
I'm Hedda Hiếu.
And I'm Ben Hoàng. These are the blessings and challenges of growing up Nguyễn in America. The first thing that sticks out for me on the Vietnam trip was when we were in Hanoi. And mainly that place because within the first couple of days of staying in a hotel there was a huge thunderstorm. It was raining so much, like really reminiscent of Hannah's story with the ice cream in the Vietnam trip in 2000. It was raining, it was pouring, flooding the streets, and Hiếu and I went outside to the little hallway that the hotel had, and we just stood there watching it. I thought it was so cool. I thought it was beautiful, just watching all this rain. Also, we were standing there for a little bit of relief because it is hot in Vietnam. So the storm was blowing some cooler air into the little hallway. But later, we went back upstairs and we found out that the room was flooding.
Oh, no.
It was flooding through the air conditioner. I didn't even know if that was possible.
I know there was definitely some problems with that room, but the image of my mind is just this hotel boy wearing all white and grabbing buckets and scrambling as quickly as possible to capture all the water in the buckets. It was definitely a mess, but yeah, you definitely don't get water like that out in California.
Was it pouring into your room as the same way it was pouring outside?
I think it kind of collected on the roof and then came down in a stream into our room. So not necessarily like rain pellets, but it just all gathered and like a pipe broke maybe or something. Yeah,
yeah, it made me think that we had a little waterfall in our room.
But besides that, we stayed in another hotel later in our trip. And I remember it was supposed to be a 3-star hotel. And when we got there, I was like, this is not a 3-star hotel. But it was kind of too late and we already paid for the reservation and things like that. So I did what most people would do. Okay, maybe not most people, but I wrote a review on TripAdvisor about it. And I stated that the place was not a 3-star hotel as they had advertised. And surprisingly, within a couple days, somebody from the hotel responded. It was unfair post that I had put out. And they said that it was unfair, my rating, because I was rating it 3 stars according to an American grading scale. Whereas in Vietnam, the hotel is a 3-star hotel. And I thought about it. And first of all, I don't think that it was just a 3-star hotel in Vietnam. Like, I think we had looked up the hotel on different websites before and things like that. And we didn't just pick it out of nowhere. But second of all, I think that was also the first time someone was pointing out that I kind of had a different standard somehow because I was looking at things with an American standard instead of what a Vietnam standard would be. And that just kind of shifted my perspective, I think, for the rest of the trip.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know all of that.
Well, just to be clear, this is, you were grading it according to standards, like unrelated to the flooding in your room, right?
Oh, this was a different hotel.
Oh, different hotel. Okay, got it.
Yeah. But we didn't always stay in hotels. We visited some like extended relatives on the trip also. We went to Thanh Hóa, you remember?
Yeah, we went to Thanh Hóa to visit Bác Linh, relative, in his clergy house.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it just being a very big house with lots of rooms. And what I definitely remember is that one of the clergy people took us out on a ride on his moped.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Hiếu and I had to take turns because it only held a driver and a passenger. But honestly, I thought it was so amazing to go ride through the streets, go through the inner alleys that were too small for cars, but big enough for the moped to get by. It was amazing.
Sounds so fun.
I didn't think it was that great. I think, I think back Lynn he was surprised when we met up with him that we hadn't been on one yet. And I think I was just very, I don't know, like colored in a sense by what Maya had said about it. Like they're very dangerous. They can go at high speeds. So I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll go. And so I took the moped with the guy after Hoàng. And he was going down like this really narrow alleyway. And I was like, and trying to make a sharp turn. I was like, okay, like, I just want to be safe. Like, it's not a big deal. I just wanted to see the city. But it was still fun and cool to get around on that. Oh, I remember when I was getting off the bike, I think my foot almost touched the exhaust pipe of the engine. Oh. And that wasn't fun either. I was just too short for the bike and the whole thing. And I was like, eh.
You think they would have smaller bikes in Vietnam for, the average height there?
I think it was because I was riding higher because I was like a passenger on the backside.
I see.
But, it was still a very fun Vietnam experience.
Wow, I think I missed all of Matt's safety talk when we saw Bac Linh in his office. I actually just remember I wasn't very good at Vietnamese and understanding it just yet, so I actually mostly just stood there, or actually, I stood to the side watching his birds.
I know Bac Linh, I don't know if you guys know the story about Bac Linh, but I know that he has a higher status in Vietnam than he previously did. He just tried to go to seminary school, and part of his schooling is he went to France to study, and he came back to Vietnam, where he did a lot of fundraising. And one of the major things that he did is, reclaim the land that the communists had taken from the church. Oh, wow. And I guess reclaim is a strong word, but, there has to be a lot of negotiating that comes with working in the business world of Vietnam nowadays. And, through fundraising, through working with various officials, he's able to get that land back into possession of the Catholic Church and rebuild the Vietnamese Catholic community, which as we know, is so huge because it did a lot for the Vietnamese-Americans coming to America. Mm-hmm. The church is here, and it still is a place for immigrants and refugees. That's what churches can be. It's another place of community. So in a way, Bac Linh was that did a lot of rebuilding for the Catholic community in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Just a little side note. I don't know if you guys know that history going in.
Yeah, I didn't really know that. I just knew that he was very involved in the church and well respected. But I mean, I didn't know all of that. Hoàng?
I didn't know that either. But maybe that explains all the fruit that he seemed to keep getting on his desk.
Yeah, he got a lot of gifts of fruit and things like that. And fruit is a really good way to show respect to people, I feel like. Well, not respect. What's better?
Gratitude?
Gratitude. There you go. I just remember when we were downstairs, I was telling Maya something, and Bac Linh, I'm not sure exactly what I had told Maya, but he had clearly overheard because I think I forgot something upstairs maybe. But I said something that would be kind of the equivalent of saying something like, my phone died in English, whereas in Vietnamese, it doesn't make sense to say that your phone died because the verb is jet, which is used for living things, not devices. And he said, chắc là con nhỏ này cần ở lại Việt Nam để học tiếng Việt, which is, this girl needs to stay in Vietnam to learn Vietnamese. And that just felt so crushing to me, because I had always spoken Vietnamese with my parents, but it felt kind of like a moment where, what kind of Vietnamese was I speaking if he didn't understand me and he was making fun of me? It was like I was speaking an American version of Vietnamese instead of Vietnamese.
I think I also remember a similar moment, actually, for Matt, when we went to Ho Chi Minh City. I remember her talking to one of her friends, I think, that we met. And one of the things that I understood from their conversation was that she told Mẹ that cái giọng của mẹ cứng lại, or the literal translation of that is that her accent had hardened or changed. And I think that was probably another moment of just like the recognition that we were speaking, I guess, an American version of Vietnamese instead of the Vietnamese of Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. And it's weird because it was clear that there was this distinction too. It's like when we were Vietnamese Americans in Vietnam, we were Viet Kieu, like Hương was talking about. But when we're Vietnamese in America, we are seen as Vietnamese first instead of Vietnamese American.
I mean, I think that's... it doesn't seem like the feelings that Hat and I had changed very much years later.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it.
Well, before we got to Ho Chi Minh City, we actually stopped in the Miền Trung area of Vietnam, which is the middle part. And we went to Nha Trang. Well, we went to Nha Trang for the beaches. They're beautiful beaches.
Oh, so you got the bin.
Yeah, we did get the bin. Nha Trang is known for its beautiful white sand on their beaches.
I wouldn't know. I didn't get to see it.
Well, ironically, we actually couldn't go to the beach very much because Hoàng kept getting red rashes on his skin.
Yeah.
But we did, at one point, try to go on a snorkeling trip because Nha Trang is supposed to be known to have beautiful white sand and things like that and clear water. So we thought it'd be a good idea to go snorkeling. And I think I'm pretty sure it's the second time in my life that I've saved your life, Hoàng.
Okay. No need to exaggerate here. But for context, the waters were very choppy and the boat was not very stable. Very reminiscent of Maya going to the US for the first time. We were all so sick on that boat. We had so much nausea and we were all on the verge of throwing up. And when they let us out to the water to go snorkel, we were not feeling it. I definitely just remember not feeling good in that water. And I guess Hiếu saved me by pulling me out.
I mean, this trip was not good for any of us, to the point that Maya went up to the conductor and told them to drop us off on an island and pick us up when they were returning back to the mainland.
Yeah.
And it probably sounds nice, like, oh, you all were dropped off on an island and you were just chilling on the beach. No, we were so seasick, we just laid there for probably 2.5 hours until that boat came back.
I know. And when we got on that beach, or the boat, I don't know if you know this, Hill. Actually, no, she does know it. We were still feeling sick, and I've felt terrible that I went to their little bathroom in there.
This is a bathroom on the boat?
Yeah, there was a bathroom on the boat. But there's no flushing system, by the way. You have to use a little ladle or a bucket, and a bigger bucket of water to go flush out whatever you got going in the toilet.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and I threw up. I cannot hold it in anymore. I had to let it out. And so I thought I was finished. So I went over to the bucket of water to, flush out the toilet. But my body said, "You are not done yet."
Oh, no.
So I ended up throwing up in the water bucket too.
Oh, my God.
And I felt very embarrassed, so I tried to scoop as much of the water / throw up and flush it out into the toilet. And I walked back out, and Hiếu walked in. I don't know what you were doing. Honestly, I probably just assumed you'd probably yak too at this rate.
Probably coming to save you again, just in case.
And then Hiếu came over to me after she came over to me afterwards and she was like, Hoàng, did you throw up? Oh.
I hope that bucket was only to flush the toilet. They hope they don't use that water for anything else.
Ooh, I hope so too.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Oh, that's okay then. Whatever.
I mean, not the most sanitary, but sure, whatever.
But it was beautiful. We went out on the second time after I threw up. So, and I was feeling good after that. So it was beautiful snorkeling.
Mm-hmm. Well, minus the fact that we tried to go underwater and the snorkels didn't work, so we just ended up swallowing the whole water. That didn't help with that whole snorkeling trip either. But we did see sea urchins.
Yes, sea urchins, the beautiful white sand.
And
And
fishes?
do we see fishes? No, I think because the boat kind of scared a lot of fishes around. Yeah, Hoang? Or
Yeah, I
actually,
think
there
so.
were some small schools, but it was nothing exciting that you would expect out of the tropics or anything like that.
Yeah.
Luckily, most of our trip was on land, though. And I remember when we got to Saigon, we took a trip out to visit our ông ngoai's brother. So our mom's uncle, which was weird thinking about my mom having an uncle in a sense, because you forget that your parents have siblings and uncles and things like that too. But also because my mom just didn't tell us that we had that relative
Yeah, that was
until
new
we
for
were
me
on
too.
that trip. I just remember driving so far out to his home. You remember, Hoang?
Yes, I do. Well, maybe I fell asleep. I don't know.
Yeah, we fell asleep a lot in the cars, but it was a long car ride, and I'm very glad that my mom's friend's friend's brother had a 4-wheel drive, so it wasn't as rocky as a trip it would have been. I think it was probably like 2.5 hours to drive out into the rural area. But driving out there, he lived on a farmland where they grew peppercorn on red soil.
Oh, here, let me just tell you a little bit about why the soil is red.
Ooh, thank you,
Okay.
soil scientist.
Thank you for this unsolicited.
It's the iron in the soil that has been oxidized, so it turns that reddish color.
Thank you.
Wow.
It was a
Wow.
very bright red.
Must be recently oxidized.
I remember also going around to the back of his house, and there's the biggest hog I had ever seen in my life. And so I went back to the front of the house and I told Maya about it. And at that time, there was also some baby chickens in the front. And so I was like, oh, like, look, they're so cute. And I was like telling my mom about them and pointing out all of these little farm animals, I guess. I probably sounded like such a city girl if you think about it. And ông Sữa, who is ông ngoai's brother, said, đâu nhỏ gì lớn rồi, which is, they're not small, they're already adults.
Wow.
And,
Oh my goodness.
and Maya and I just looked at each other, and Maya said, oh, in America, it takes, I don't know, 6 weeks to have a full grown chicken. So we were both surprised that he was telling us it took them 3 years to grow this chicken, and it still looked like a baby to us.
Wow.
He also said that looters would come by the property if the chickens weren't put away at night, either kidnap them or just slit their throats to mess with people, which was, I don't know if that's worse than just kidnapping the chickens, because then you wake up to a chicken that's beheaded in your yard. But anywho, we ended up sitting down for a little bit as his wife was preparing lunch.
Oh, I just thought of something. What if he slit the necks of or not he, but like the kidnapper slit the necks of the chicken so that it could attract the prey, and the prey would chase after the other chicken flock?
Wow.
That's
That was
quite a scheme.
Quite a scheme.
Okay, all right, continue your story. Sorry.
Right. So as we were sitting down, he told us about how when he was much younger, he heard that the Viet Cong were approaching. So he warned his villagers, and nobody believed him. But finally, he was able to convince them. And at the very last moment, he was getting people into boats, pushing out the last boat, and about to hop in. And that's when the Viet Cong stopped him. And they picked him up, brought him back to jail as punishment, of course. And I couldn't even imagine that. This was the first time I was ever meeting him. So I didn't really know what to expect. But he told me what prison was like, having one set of clothing for the entire year through the blazing heat and the cold, having shoes that didn't fit, using any cloth that he could find to wrap his feet so they wouldn't bleed, rationed soupy water as food and sometimes water to drink, but the water was always dirty, laboring in fields until his hands bled. It was Vietnam in the 1960s. Going to prison in that time was, not easy. When he was finally released from prison, he didn't know where any of his family was at all. I think they all presumed him to be dead. It was 30 years later, after all. 30 years. I remember thinking that his wife looked really young, and my aunt later told me that women his age would have already been settled down. So he ended up marrying someone much younger than him who he would have been able to start a family with. I think it was the whole conversation and the experience being there just felt like I was coming face to face with what the Vietnam War really meant to people. Men in our family went to war or were imprisoned. Like, ông ngoại went to the Navy, ông nội was also imprisoned, and here I was talking to ông ngoai's brother, who was also imprisoned. Families were broken. Families were separated. And just being able to sit there was a beautiful moment of being able to reconnect to family. And who would have thought? He probably never imagined that he would be able to get out and see his family again, or have a family, or even that he would ever get out of jail. It was truly a special moment that I never thought would come about.
Yeah, that's honestly amazing, Hiếu. I mean, I was there, but at the time, I don't think my Vietnamese was that great, so I didn't really participate in the conversation or really sat there and listened. I'm really glad that we're doing this podcast right now to share these stories, because otherwise I wouldn't have known all this history that you brought up, all the little differences in those moments where we didn't exactly fit in Vietnam. I think I did experience them, but I couldn't put it into words. And I think you guys have really done that for me, is put into words what I was thinking and feeling at that time.
I'm really glad you got to experience that, Hiếu and Hoàng. It's such a marked experience that's different from me and Hương, but still touches upon the same experience that we had, going to your home country, where you belong, where your parents are from, and you're in, but you're not quite in. And when you step in, you unravel this whole other world of history that runs deep, and it's yours. This is my story. This is our story.
And I felt this, so I'm curious to know, did you think that a part of you thought that going back to Vietnam, or going to Vietnam for the first time in 2000, was going to feel like going home or give you more of a sense of belonging?
Oh, I'm not going to lie. Yeah. I totally thought about that. I thought that if I went home to Vietnam, that I would feel like I belonged more so than I did in America.
Mm-hmm. Then came the word Viet Kieu, or overseas Vietnamese. It just sunk in and solidified that there are expectations of Vietnamese-Americans when they visit Vietnam, in the same way that there are expectations of Vietnamese people in the United States.
And I think it's important to add that we say Vietnamese-American too. at times there's a problem when we just lump everything under Asian American because it hides specific ethnicities as histories of being in America. The Vietnamese suffered the Vietnam War. Japanese Americans were put into internment camps. The Chinese Exclusion Act. There's a lot hidden by aggregated data and the blanket statement, Asian American.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's so important that we talk about our stories and listen to other people's stories too. Just going back, I thought of Huang's story about how someone had commented on Maya's accent, how it had changed when she came back to Vietnam. It makes me think about how long have our parents been in the United States? Probably more than half of their lives at this point. So being Vietnamese American isn't something just for us, for people who have born here, but also people who have left Vietnam and are now living here and have planted their roots here.
Mm.
They've had to go through so much. Like, we know that they've gone through so much. I mean, there's the, rebuilding your whole lives, but think about the culture and tradition, things that make you feel like you're part of home again, or things that are part of home. We've eaten pho all our lives, but only now since we've seen sriracha become such a phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Or, there's Nước Mắm at Costco, Whole Foods, Nước Mắm or fish sauce. At Costco
And like
too,
the
actually.
fancy kind where it's like cold pressed or something like that.
And there's also mit or jackfruit that you can find at Costco, apparently.
Yeah.
So as you go all through this, time has changed. So this is things that we find now. So imagine when you're coming for the first time, you can't get all these ingredients of your culture. And so you adapt. You adapt your food. You probably adapt your customs, your traditions. You just realize that we're not going to be 100% Vietnamese. It's just not possible, having been born in Oakland and being grown up in the Bay Area. But I think we can start to recognize that being Vietnamese is part of who we are, and it's part of what we're trying to navigate as Vietnamese Americans.
Mm. I just want to say that I think the challenge in finding out what Vietnamese American means to us is the social expectation. And from experience in both worlds, from all our chapters before, it's that feeling of being inadequate, like we're neither Vietnamese or American enough.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's why we have these blends of a culture. I mean, as Vietnamese Catholics, we have Easter and Christmas. But clearly they've been kind of adapted to, I don't know if they Easter egg hunt in Vietnam. But we definitely do it here. And there's other major ones like Tết or New Year's, đám cưới, weddings, đám hỏi, engagements, đám ma, funerals. They've kind of had to blend with what, I guess, Americans do and the Western culture does, because we can't bring it all over to the United States. And let's kind of talk a little bit more about that blend that we start to create, that hybrid of a culture, the new Vietnamese American traditions. Let's do that in chapter 8 as we close out our book.
Woo woo.
Thanks for listening to our podcast, Growing Up Nguyễn. We'd love to hear what you think about our episode today, so please reach out to us through our website at www.growingupnguyen.com or follow us on Instagram at growing.up.nguyen. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. We're Hương, Hạnh, Hiếu and Hoàng, and this is Growing Up Nguyễn.